Hello guys, welcome all of you to today's Farmcast. I hope all of you are doing well and gearing off for your revision, and some of you might have already started it. So today guys, we'll be discussing about 5 drugs of choice as we usually do, and a couple of questions asked by few students, which are how to note down the extra points from a Q bank explanation obviously, and how to review the grand tests, right, that you appear for. So I'll discuss that at last. Now guys, let us begin with our drugs of choice for the time being. The first disorder is essential thrombocythemia. Now guys, essential thrombocythemia is a disorder where we use one anti-cancer drug and one anti-aggregant, and that is a regimen. But if they ask you single drug of choice, then obviously anti-cancer drug becomes your drug of choice. Now think guys, which anti-cancer drug is the drug of choice for essential thrombocythemia? Can you think of any drug? It starts with alphabet H. So all of you might have got it by now, that it is hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea guys, mechanism of action is also important. So think, how does it act? Right, so hydroxyurea inhibits DNA synthesis. But how does it afford to inhibit DNA synthesis? It blocks an enzyme called as RNR, ribonucleotide diphosphate reductase, and thus it blocks conversion of ribose nucleotides into deoxyribose nucleotides, which are the starting material for DNA synthesis. So that is how it blocks. So block of RNR, it is also an important MCQ point. The anti-aggregate of choice, as all of you know guys, the most widely used anti-aggregate is aspirin. So drug of choice for essential thrombocythemia, hydroxyurea, regimen hydroxyurea plus aspirin. Moving on to the second disorder for today, essential tremor. Now essential tremor guys, the drug of choice is obviously, most of you might know this, that it is a beta blocker called as propranolol. And apart from that, if propranolol is not effective, then I can go for some alternatives like primidone, which is an anti-epileptic drug, gabapentin, also an anti-epileptic, topiramate, also an anti-epileptic, or I can go for a calcium channel blocker, that is nimodipine. So these are the alternatives. The most important thing here is propranolol being the drug of choice for essential tremor, that is most frequently asked. So they can ask you all except type of MCQ which one is not used, then these alternative drugs will also be useful to answering such questions, right? And in alternative drugs, if you ask me which is the most important one, it is topiramate guys. Topiramate is very frequently asked in your exams. Like apart from epilepsy, most commonly what they ask you about topiramate is the other uses of topiramate. Like you must know about topiramate. It's used in prophylaxis of migraine. It is used for treatment of obesity. And the third one we discussed today is essential tremor. Moving on to third one guys, it is a poisoning, ethylene glycol poisoning. Now guys, it's an easy one. Ethylene glycol poisoning, the drug of choice is fomepizole, and you must know fomepizole is also the drug of choice for methanol poisoning. How this drug and why these drugs are used? This drug is used, fomepizole, the reason being it is a competitive blocker of an enzyme called as alcohol dehydrogenase, which metabolizes methanol as well as ethylene glycol into toxic metabolites. So to block production of those toxic metabolites, we need to block alcohol dehydrogenase by giving fomepizole. Moving on guys to the fourth disorder for today, familial Mediterranean fever. Now what is the drug of choice? I'll give you a clue. The drug that is used here is primarily a drug that is used for treatment of gout. So you must have got the answer right. It is colchicine. So colchicine guys is a drug, as all of you know, it blocks microtubules. Its mechanism of action is important. Colchicine blocks microtubules, and because of block of microtubule, it has anti-cancer effect as well, right? And the anti-inflammatory effect that is seen is because of block of microtubules in the lymphocytes. Yes guys, cells also have microtubules, and they help in locomotion, that is movement, which is important for chemotaxis, that is migration, right? So colchicine in other words blocks chemotaxis of lymphocytes or migration of lymphocytes as well. And the primary use of colchicine, as all of you know, it is either used in acute gout or prophylaxis of acute gout whenever we start the patient on a drug like allopurinol, right? So allopurinol like drugs, they can cause acute gout, and I've discussed this in the lecture, the reason. Now moving on to the last disorder for today is again a drug toxicity guys. It is toxicity to fibrinolytic agent. right? Toxicity to fibrinolysis by giving drugs like alteplase, reteplase, or streptokinase. So when there is toxicity, in that case, what we do? What is the drug of choice? Your two options are epsilon aminocaproic acid and tranexamic acid. If you have to choose one, which one do you think is the best option? Think, guys. Students, they often get confused in between these two options. Guys, remember, the most specific drug that is preferred for fibrinolytic toxicity is EACA, epsilon aminocaproic acid. Tranexamic acid is not much preferred. It is rather preferred for some other bleeding like gastric bleeding or varicose bleeding or any kind of bleeding. You can use tranexamic acid, right? And second important point about these drugs, EACA and tranexamic acid, mechanism of action. Think for a while. How do they act? They block something. They block something that causes fibrinolysis. What causes fibrinolysis? It is plasmin, right? So these are inhibitors of plasmin, or these are plasmin antagonists. So guys, that's all in this section of drug of choice. So as you had asked me to discuss one anti-cancer drug every day, so I'm moving on with the same routine. The anti-cancer drug that I've chosen today is not one but two, because both are similar, 6-mercaptopurine and 6-thioguanine. So both these drugs are purine analogs. Now guys, remember, whenever you give purine analogs, they will cause selective toxicity to lymphocytes, right? So if there is selective toxicity to lymphocytes, then we will use those drugs mostly for treatment of leukemia. So 6-mercaptopurine, 6-thioguanine, right? When they were invented, they were boon for treatment of leukemia. And you take any purine analog, their use would be in leukemia. Like 6-mercaptopurine, 6-thioguanine, overall they're used in most types of leukemia. Fludarabine, is also purine analog. Fludarabine, which is used for treatment of ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. You take about cladribine. Cladribine is used in, or it is drug of choice for hairy cell leukemia. So leukemia is the most important use of purine analogs. Now 6-mercaptopurine, 6-thioguanine, they have fallen out of favor. Means they are not preferred nowadays much. Two reasons. One is bone marrow suppression. Second, hepatotoxicity. Both are important MCQ points. The last point here, that is with relation to a specific drug, that is 6-mercaptopurine, is that many a times we have to use allopurinol to prevent tumor lysis syndrome whenever we are giving chemotherapy for leukemia, right? Because a lot of cells will die and your uric acid turnover would increase in these patients. To prevent that tumor lysis syndrome, we use allopurinol, but the problem is allopurinol and 6-mercaptopurine both are metabolized by the same enzyme, that is xanthine oxidase. So allopurinol will competitively inhibit block of metabolism of 6-mercaptopurine and cause its toxicity. So what is the solution? Whenever you combine allopurinol with 6-mercaptopurine, decrease the dose of 6-mercaptopurine by 75%, which means if I was giving 100 milligrams of 6-mercaptopurine, with allopurinol, I'll give only 25 milligrams. Right, guys? Now we have reached towards the last part of our Pharmcast, and two questions which students they had asked. I'll discuss two of them. One is how to note down extra points from QBank, and there are a lot of points in those, and while I note down all of them, I'm kind of clouded. What should I note down? What should I not note down? And this is taking a toll on me. So what should I do? This is what the student had asked. Now guys, remember, this is a dilemma that everyone faces. Even I used to face this dilemma when I was solving those guidebooks, and when I was giving the grant tests and I was getting the explanation, right? So you'll get a bulky explanation to those grant tests. We used to get, at that time there was no online, so we used to get those physical copies. So it was a big headache. It was a big headache because you had the temptation to write everything down, and even I did that. In the initial times, I kept on writing every damn point that I would get on my way. But then I realized that parallelly to my own notes, I'm creating another source of notes, and which is haphazard, frankly speaking. So that made me a little bit worried, because I realized I would not be able to revise both. So guys, remember, there is no point in compromising your revision of notes. Whatever faculty has taught you, whatever platform you are using, does not matter. Believe in the notes that the faculties they have given, because with those notes you'll be able to solve most of the questions, right? Do not fall prey to FOMO, fear of missing out, right? Because that would be counterproductive if you gather too much information from all these sources and keep piling up on your notes, then you would be missing out on those important points which had been taught to you by the faculties, right guys? So remember, believe in those notes. And I'm not saying not to write down the points, but write down points. Number one, you need to see if that topic is frequently repeated in the exams. For example, if you take medicine, then HOCM, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, hyperkalemia, these topics are like evergreen topics, guys. Every exam will have MCQ on these. So if you are not able to solve questions from frequently repeated topics, then it is a worry. So what you need to do, I'll tell you after this at last. But if you get some points which are important regarding these, and because of which you're not able to solve MCQs or repeatedly asked questions, then you can note them down, or you can just write them down. How you'll write them down, I'll tell you at last, right? And so all in all, you don't need to be too aggressive, right? Or else it can be a counterproductive way of preparation, right guys? So that's the last thing I'd like to tell you here regarding this first question, that don't overdo yourself. Limit yourself as much as possible, right? Second question, how to review the grant test, right guys? So the student asked me, sir, how to review grant tests? It takes a lot of time, and sometimes I'm not able to finish in one day. It takes me 2 to 3 days. So guys, I'll tell you what I used to do. I used to allot a day for GT. So it was the grant test day for me. I wouldn't do anything on that day. I'll just give the test, come back home, and for that whole day I would analyze while going through the explanation and the questions for those questions where I went wrong. So I would analyze where I went wrong and what was the reason. So the reasons could be two, right? If it is a fact-based question and I was doing it wrong repeatedly, then what I would do is I would just write down those facts on a separate piece of pasted paper and paste on my wall, so that I can frequently revise it every day while sipping coffee or tea, or just, right, whenever you want it. So that's one way to deal with facts if you have problems with fact-based questions, right? For example, the rate-limiting enzymes or appearances of bacteria or whatever it is. Now, if it is a concept that I'm not getting, and because of that concept I'm not able to crack that every time the question is asked, right? Suppose it is an acid-base disorder, or suppose it is a question related to something conceptual like an ECG, I'm not able to diagnose it. So whatever be the topic, if I'm not able to solve these conceptual questions based upon concept, right, what I used to do is I would go back to my notes and see, after reading that note, if I'm able to get it, why that particular answer, why that particular question has a particular answer, and why I was not able to pick it up. Now, if things did not work out from the notes point of view, I would go back to a standard textbook, right? And standard textbook, I will just briefly go through that particular topic. And if required, I'll make a separate note of that topic if I'm not able to repeatedly solve these questions on the same concept. So guys, remember, standard textbook you can use in your preparation, but it depends how you use it, because using standard textbooks for preparation in a very short period of time can be a double-edged sword, right? If you will read it from cover to cover, then it will be a problem. But if you read specifically to patch those leaks in your boat of preparation, then it does wonder. So that's one thing I used to do, and the problem, it happened with me as well, because at times I would not be able to analyze the whole question. So there were 300 questions and I could finish 200, 220, and I used to get tired. The day was over, and the next day I already had timetable that I had to revise or study something else, and I would get depressed that I could not finish it. But guys, I had to make peace with myself that I did as much I could do, and I could do nothing about it, because if I would stretch it to another one day, I would be compromising on my next schedule, and things will keep on piling up, and ultimately my other subjects would suffer. So I could not let that happen. So you have to understand that everything in your preparation will not be neat and clean, right? As you would want that I'll review all the 300 questions and I'll make it a perfect thing. It does not happen, guys. It does not happen. So you have to find your little tiny perfection in the sea of imperfection, right? So everywhere there would be some imperfection. Everything will not be tidy. That does not mean your preparation is jeopardized, guys. It does not mean at all. So all in all, the crux is make yourself a timetable, stick to it, and see and try your limit best as much as you can do. If it is not possible, make peace with it, move on, and because right, it's not a 2 or 3 subject exam. It is a subject of 19, it is an exam of 19 subjects. So you have to equally distribute your focus to each and every subject. So guys, I hope I made it clear that whenever you get these extra points which you to ask me in the beginning, then you might not add on those to your notes. You can just, if these are facts, you can just write down on a piece of paper, paste on your wall if you think it is important and it is repeatedly being asked. If you see one question out of blue, out of nowhere, then you need not worry about this. If it is a very rare stuff, you need not worry about that. You should worry about repeatedly asked common stuffs which you can see around you. The diseases, the disorders which you saw around you during the internship, they are most important, guys, because the focus would be on those. Before ending this session today, I'd like to tell you one more thing, because the way I saw the MCA exam screening was conducted, this time, guys, easily I can predict that this year in a NEET exam there will be a lot of images. And out of 300 questions, I guess 150 plus would be images, guys. Yes, it can be that much, that high, and I'm pretty sure about it. So what you can do is, as I have said earlier as well, in one of my posts, Farmcast, when a student asked me, sir, what to do on the last day, and I said I'm bullish on images for this year exams. So for the last day, you need to have a good collection of images. So last day of exam, you can just sit quietly and revise those images. So guys, keep collecting those important images at one place, preferably in soft copies, so it is easier to compile and revise. And don't forget to write down a point or two about those images or diseases to which the image is related, so you can revise on the last day of exam, and you will see it will do wonders for you guys. So that's all for today, guys. If you have any questions like these related to your preparation, guys, I'm more than happy to give you my input into those questions, and I'll be including your questions in one of my next Farmcast. So guys, take care. Bye bye. This was Dr. Rajan with you.